Hi, I'm Daniel Hirsch. I'm a playwright and screenwriter who wrote for the third season of Antaeus Theater's Zip Code plays. And if you want to hear more about the Zip Code plays, listen to this interview. I first fell in love with theater probably when I was 4 years old, and I went to see my older sister and mother in a community theater production of Oklahoma. I think it was Valley Players in Holyoke, Massachusetts. Yeah, it was it just like got into my bones. The drama, the storytelling, the pretending, and then in terms of when I wanted it to be a part of my life, when I wanted to be involved in the theater making world. I was like a very sort of self-serious, some would say pretentious high school theater kid. Got very into sort of mid-century plays like Brecht and German Marxist playwrights. And so it was something that early on I was really passionate about. But then I kind of fell away from it and explored other things. And then some point in my 20s, I started writing plays because I really missed the sort of collaborative nature of theater. And I missed that mode of storytelling. I had been working as a journalist for a little while, but I just wanted a creative outlet. So I started writing plays. And yeah, something just clicked in. It became something I realized this early love that I'd kind of walked away from that I wanted to get back into. And yeah, and kind of made a commitment in my 20s that like I was going to be a playwright now, and I was going to just try to make it work as a playwright. So I fell in love with writing. I've always been a writer in some capacity. Like I worked as a journalist for a period. I also, experimented with short fiction in college. But always like a fascination with storytelling and narrative. And then I really started writing plays at this moment where I just wanted to be creative, and I didn't have a lot of creative outlets at that point in my life. And I think like the moment I had sort of I had a production of a short play. It was in San Francisco. It was a festival called the Bay Area One Acts. And I had a short play in it, and it was just being in a room with people watching my play up on stage was just like truly electrifying. And I just felt like this is a thing I have to keep doing. And after that production, I had, a couple readings here and there, and I was getting positive feedback about my plays. But I hadn't really studied theater in any sort of formal way. And I knew to take myself sort of seriously as a writer, and to really commit to it. I felt like I needed more mentorship, more instruction. And I actually went and got an MFA in dramatic writing at Carnegie Mellon. And that was kind of a mark at a period in my 20s where I was just like, okay, I'm in this. I'm about to collect student debt for this. So this is something I'm serious about. So I think that was a moment where it was I was all in. There was kind of no turning back. I think there's a quality to theater that some people, I have friends who like don't like going to see live theater because of this quality. It's the nature of kind of being trapped together in a room that I think makes theater really unique. It is about gathering of bodies in a place. And you're sort of, when you go to the theater, you're committing to be with other people, and there's something very kind of ritualistic about it in a way. And it's, I think the playwright Annie Baker has a quote that's just like, theater is my church. It's like where I go to congregate and to be in community. And I think that's really true. And for me, yeah, it's really true for me. So yeah, the like nature of just collectively deciding to be in this space together makes theater really different from any other medium. So I think I try to write plays that have to exist with physical bodies. They like have to be bodies in a room, and that's why the play exists. Because like there's something about the story that I'm telling that it's like it's it's bodily and it's ephemeral. You know, it's like only one place, one time. My process for creating a play from idea to getting it on stage is really different for every play I write, basically. And it really depends on if it's a commission, that's like a really different process than if I'm just out in the wild writing my own plays, hoping that someone will do it. I think for these zip code plays for Antaeus Theater, I loved the first 2 seasons of the zip code plays. I thought they were such a great use of audio and sound. And I'm relatively new to Los Angeles. So for me, it was really exciting to get to explore all these different neighborhoods. So when they heard that they were doing another season, I just got really excited about the prospect of doing something in my neighborhood, 90039. And really just started by like doing very basic research about my zip code. And so that play started with like really research. I was like, what can I find that's interesting? But other plays, there's something I'm thinking about that's kind of just percolating in my brain. And if it's like percolating longer enough, if like the tune kind of gets caught in my head a little bit, a certain idea, that will be something I start to explore. And maybe I'll write a little scene, maybe I'll write prose kind of talking about what I'm interested in. And it can be a really long gestation period. It can take a really long time, or it can go really fast. I think for me, I get the most work done when I'm like working towards a goal or a deadline. So I often organize myself around submission deadlines, conferences I want to apply to. I'm in writers groups, so like I'll write pages knowing that I have committed to bringing in pages in a couple weeks, and the play will kind of grow from there. So it changes a lot depending on the play. A friend of mine, the playwright Julie Jagor, was in Antaeus, and I had I'm relatively new to LA, so I'm still figuring out the LA theater scene. But she invited me to, in the pre-pandemic times, they had the Playwrights Lab that would meet I believe it was Tuesday night, in their theater in Glendale. And playwrights would bring fresh, brand new pages, and then their company of actors would read it. And I was so like in love with the lab the minute I stepped in, just because like the acting talent was so good for like basically cold readings. And it really gave life to these works in progress, in a way that, other like reading series I had been to just like didn't quite, or workshops I had been to didn't quite do that. Because the company of actors is so committed and so talented. And so when I knew that they were opening their window for applications for new playwrights, I sent a play right away, because I could tell this is a company that really, I was excited by their commitment to new work. And the company of actors is so great. And I would be really excited to work with any number of actors in the Antaeus company. I heard about the zip code plays, the first season of them, and I gobbled up season 1, and again was just so I love the format. I used to do a little bit of radio in college. I've always kind of been a fan of radio dramas, and I'm also someone who loves learning about different neighborhoods in a city, loves learning history. So it felt like such a great format to illuminate different parts of LA, sort of unheard stories of LA and different histories. and also like a fun format to work in. I hadn't really written a play strictly for audio. So yeah, I was really, really excited about the prospect of collaborating on this and working on my own script. Yeah, I knew right away as soon as I heard that they were doing this, that this was something I wanted to participate in and come up with an idea for. So I actually recently moved to this zip code. I'm not technically in the neighborhood that gets called Frogtown, but I'm like right across the street basically. And it's such a fascinating neighborhood. There's something so LA about it. There's something very strange about it. It's this very geographically isolated neighborhood. Like basically the 5 freeway is one border and the LA River is the other. So it's just like this little sliver of land between Silver Lake and like sort of Glassell Park, Glendale, Atwater Village. And it's like very geographically isolated. And it's also a neighborhood experiencing like massive gentrification right now. It's historically been an overlooked neighborhood. But like much is happening and changing there, including these like big ecological changes. So that section of the LA River, there's been all these efforts to revitalize it, regreen it. There's plans for like big parks a la the High Line in New York, in Frogtown, which I'm kind of lost track where they are in the development. And I think the pandemic probably threw things off. But yeah, so it's a neighborhood that's experiencing massive change that is both sort of sociological and ecological. There's really an effort to deal with the river in a new way. And so I've been really fascinated with this neighborhood since I heard about it when I first moved to LA. So I knew I wanted to do this zip code when there was a call for proposals from Antaeus. And then I just Googled, I just hit Wikipedia, read through old LA Times articles to sort of find an interesting nugget about Frogtown's history, to try to really figure out what my in was. And I came across this article, I think it was from KCET, about where the name Frogtown came from. And the name Frogtown truly did come because every year there would be a seasonal infestation of these little frogs or toads. People aren't quite sure what they were. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. What happened to these frogs? And like, I think about in the 80s or 90s, suddenly there was no more frogs every spring. And it's unclear exactly why. And I just thought that was so interesting. That was like a perfect little nugget of neighborhood history to dive into and explore. And thinking about the massive sociological changes and ecological changes happening in the neighborhood, and thinking about this history of Frogtown, where it came from, the development of the neighborhood, those like things all merged together. And landed on this play about new homeowners. My zip code play, Frogtown 90039, Anaxyrus Boreas, is about 2 new homeowners who move to Frogtown, only to discover shortly after moving that they are experiencing a massive biblical scale infestation of tiny little amphibians, these frogs, inhabiting their new home. So we kind of watched this couple, Issa and oh my God, Hannah. So we watched this couple, Issa and Hannah, navigate this bizarre ecological occurrence while at the same time navigating a kind of challenging relationship with a longtime neighbor, or he's their new neighbor, but he's a longtime resident named Bernard. And it's kind of a comedy of manners between this new couple and this new neighbor, and then also a sort of surreal, overwhelming plague of frogs. So I had a great crew of collaborators working on my play about Frogtown. So the actors were Rebekah, Tripp, Carolyn, Ratteray, and Alex Alpharaoh, who are Antaean actors. And I think they just brought so much to the roles. We had a really short rehearsal time, but they just dove in and inhabited these characters and made really great choices. And then my director was a director named Sara Lyons, who I actually know from graduate school. And they, again, like with limited rehearsal time, really deconstructed the material and built it back up again with the actors. Yeah, because I mean, all of it took place on Zoom. So like we have this in the center of the play, there's a long-term relationship, and you have to feel the long-term and intimacy of their connection very quickly in the course of the play. And so that all happened on Zoom in like a very short rehearsal time. And then Jeff Gardner was our incredible sound designer. He designed all the sound for all of the Zip Code plays. Yeah, I mean, I like, when I was writing this play, I was sort of nervous. I was like, is this too big? Like at some point there's frogs coming through the walls because like there's so, and there's a huge thunderstorm in the middle of the play. And I was leaning on that stuff because I was like, this is what audio drama can do that maybe like a stage play can't. It can do these big sound effects and put you like in a different world. And so I was a little sheepish when my first draft. And the Bill and Anna, the producers of the Zip Code play, and Jeff were like, no, go big. Like we want this. We like this play because it's leaning into sound and doing something big with it. And Jeff was totally up for the challenge of designing a gigantic swarm of frogs in this little bungalow in Frogtown. So I think there's a lot of things that are really different about writing just for audio versus writing for stage. But I will say the core element of like knowing who your characters are and knowing what the story is shared universally throughout all types of dramatic writing. So in some ways it was really, I was working with a set of constraints. I was like, okay, 3 characters in somewhere in LA, like, and that is very similar to writing for a stage. Like you're like, okay, I have a cast of 4 and like limited sets. Like, what can I write? So in some ways it was very similar, and then in ways it was like really different. I think the freedom to explore sound and create big special effects is something I think I would shy away from on stage. I'm an emerging writer, and I'm often pitching plays to like young companies that don't have gigantic budgets. So in a stage play, I think I would feel pretty shy about being like, okay, in the second act, there's a gigantic infestation of frogs. I need the roof to collapse. And I need it to be like flooded with like swamp water. I would never write that, or like, I would be very careful about including that in a stage. Cause I think at this point in my career, I want plays to look producible. I want a theater company to be like, oh, this is within our ability. But with sound, I could go kind of ham. I could go big with it because Jeff Gardner, our incredible sound designer, has a whole library of sound effects that he could layer in. He could amplify. He could make strange. So that was really fun to get the chance to like have special effects in my work. And then I think and then there's like little things that are I didn't think about when I first started writing that I learned about as I was going along and when I was getting feedback from Jeff. And that's just like placing people is like a thing you have to think about when you're writing an audio drama. So like if I had a scene where these 2 characters in a room, like I, as the writer, sort of had to figure out like how far away they were and when they came together and when they like were apart, just because like it impacts the quality of the actor's voice. If they're entering a room, they have to lean back from the camera and then push in. So like just getting like a little granular about like space and location was definitely different as a playwright who's just like, they enter, they're on stage, like you'll figure out where they are in the room eventually. But as I was writing it, like really figuring out entrances and exits were a thing I had to think through. Yeah, and then just I think also, I had a theater writing, my mentor in playwriting often said, like, if there's a vital piece of information in your play, you should probably say it twice, because like, what if someone coughs the first time an actor says it? And I think in the world of audio dramas, it's almost 3 times, just because you only have your ears to hear information. There's nothing visual to like undergird it. So you really, and there's no way to catch up sometimes when you're listening to an audio drama. So I think just being really clear about relationships, about stakes, about story points. So the person who's on their Peloton listening or walking their dog or doing laundry won't get left behind in the story. I hope that the audience who listens to my zip code play walks away from it really thinking about, these big forces changing LA, and that's climate change, ecological change, and gentrification. And the play asks a lot of questions about what it means to enter a neighborhood as a newcomer. And not just a neighborhood, but like on a larger scale, like an ecology. What is your responsibility to the place that you come to as a new arrival? What do you owe the natural worlds? What do you owe the original inhabitants? And then it sort of also asks, like, what does it even mean to be an original inhabitant? Because I think the real original inhabitants is the earth. And so the play asks a lot of questions, ethical questions, and sort of, about that kind of responsibility. So I hope audiences leave the play thinking about that, thinking about their own role in whatever ecologies they're a part of. When I listen to the zip code plays, I really look forward to getting to know a new slice of Los Angeles, getting a glimpse into a piece of history. And then, of course, like, I look forward to just these rich, fully embodied performances. I think all of the cast do such a good job inhabiting these roles that are just voice. And so I look forward to spending time with like fully embodied characters that are just voices. And and just like I love the use of sound, and I love hearing how Jeff and the whole creative team makes a world that feels like totally immersive and grounded in reality, even though it's all sound effects. I think people should listen to the zip code plays who want to hear great stories that really explore every facet of living in Los Angeles, which is one of, in the 4 years I've lived in Los Angeles, I've really come to appreciate just its incredible complexity and strangeness. It's a very strange town. And it's got such a rich history. So many different people have passed through here. So many different types of communities are rubbing up against each other in Los Angeles. So it's this real stew. And I think sometimes the best way to know a place is to like explore the fiction about it. And the zip code plays are a group of plays by contemporary writers really trying to get their hands and minds around one particular part of LA. And so it's just a really great exploration of the city and its people and its drama. I am not sure if I'm looking forward to seeing this play on stage, because I really wrote it thinking about audio, and thinking about it as something that existed for the ears. So it's hard for me to imagine it in any other format. With that said, like I came to be really interested in these characters as I was writing it. I realized there's a lot I had to say on this theme, and like maybe the compactness of the Zip Code plays. There is room to expand on this world and these characters, but yeah, I think it's an audio play, and I think it's probably staying that way. The stories we tell about ourselves shape who we become, and I think having a diverse group of artists and creators making imaginary worlds that are inclusive and diverse enables us as a society to recreate that equity and inclusion out in the world. And so I really do believe that having everyone at the table in creative spaces makes for more democratic, more equitable like society. So concerning the Antaeus Playwrights Lab, we're in a moment right now where so many American theaters are reckoning with their failures in the past to be inclusive, to be representative. And I think by investing in new plays and new play development, you will naturally create, well, maybe not naturally, you have to be pretty intentional in whose new plays you produce and what you make. But I think investing in new playwrights will create more representative, more diverse, more inclusive plays, because contemporary playwrights are existing in a world that is diverse, that is multilingual, and their plays are going to reflect that. I think if you only do Edward Albee or Shakespeare or Chekhov, there's a very good chance like your plays won't represent the complexity and diversity of America in 2022. So putting a little bit of investment in new plays goes towards that. And I just think like theater is an enduring medium that has like stood the test of time. But the only way it's done that is like through innovation, like through new voices, through stories and dramas that reflect on the present moment and feel like vital and urgent to tell. I would tell other playwrights and actors that they should get involved with Antaeus Playwright Company, theater company, because it is, really committed to great ensemble vibes. I think the Antaeus Playwrights Company, like anything I've been involved with them, it's really collaborative, and it just feels like it's a company that's really interested in supporting an ensemble of people, and there's a real sense of community in the work that Antaeus does, and community is one of the most important things for me in theater. Companies like Antaeus is so important because they're hubs of community. And when you have a theater in a downtown Glendale, people are going to go to it, and then they're also going to go out to dinner, and then they're also going to congregate in your public spaces. And without that, you have a void, and you have like, there's not places for us to get away from Zoom, get away from our homes. And I think in the last 2 years, we're like in a mental health crisis because people are trapped at home. And I think we've seen how vital it is to congregate, to commune with others. And spaces like Antaeus that represent a wealth of voices can be that communal watering hole, that place where people congregate. So I think supporting theater, supporting local theater is so vital for community health. My name is Daniel Hirsch, and I'm a playwright with Antaeus Theater. And I encourage anyone who hasn't done so already to listen to season 3 of the Zip Code plays. See you at the theater.